Hey guys, Adam Savage in my cave. One of my favorite things about the spate of beautiful live-action Star Wars shows we're getting is their commitment to using models and miniatures where they can to tell their stories. So when they began production on Ahsoka, I jumped at the chance to head up to Lucasfilm and visit their motion control stage. And while they had a beautiful CGI model of Ahsoka's T6 Jedi Shuttle that they used extensively, they also augmented that footage with some model motion control shots, of her ship. My friend John Goodson spent 4 months building this thing, and it is so beautiful, not just fully textured and lit, but it also has a working, mechanized, rotating wing. Let's check it out. Okay, I'll start. Of course I'm gonna start. Dan, John, tell me what we're looking at. It looks like a new Star Wars ship to me.
You talk about it, please.
This is the T6 from the Ahsoka show.
This is Ahsoka's ship?
Yeah.
It is really, really lovely. You guys built this?
Yes, we did.
Am I right about this? In your garages?
Yeah, in our garages.
Turns out these days, always in our garages, yeah.
Okay. And this isn't, if I'm correct, it's only configuration.
This has quite a few different configurations.
Can we actually move between any of them in this current state?
It should move freely as long as it's not colliding with the riser.
Risers are stuck.
Keep coming.
Those are the...
Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
And when this all works correctly, these descend. When the wing flattens out, these also collapse top and bottom to kind of make it look sleeker.
Okay.
All this mechanism built by Dan.
Okay, so we're going to talk about this for a second, Dan. So there's a central column, and then both of these wings are right off this external thing here?
Right. It's a 2.5 inch, 3 inch tube with about 13 different rings, and they all do different things. A few of them have screws that go through that hold 2 supports here.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that holds the wings on.
Oh my gosh.
And there's the furthest ring in the back has a slip ring to send power to the wings.
Oh no.
Because we weren't sure whether we were going to do 360-degree shots or not. So I added that in as a possibility.
You gave that functionality to them.
And then there are several rings that have bearings behind them. Mm-hmm. And 2 of the rings are made out of aluminum so that I could screw these supports into them. And each wing weighs about 2.5, almost 3 pounds.
Oh my God.
And it's all supported from here.
And it's also motorizable?
It's also motorized, yeah.
So you can do this in the motion control camera?
Yes.
Good Lord.
It's all chain driven because we tried belt drive and the stepper was not having anything to do with it.
Just in terms of the amount of weight it had to move?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hooked it up the first time and it went and didn't do anything.
And that's about the maximum size of a motor. This is like regarding the maximum size of a motor you could fit in there?
Yes, because there's a very limited amount of space back here where I could put the motor.
Oh my God.
So there's a drive shaft that goes from the motor forward into here, into a ring gear, an internal ring gear, and that's what drives it.
Oh my God.
Because we had to keep the center clear so we could do a front or back mount. So
All this makes me tired just thinking about it. How long did it take you to build this mechanism?
It took a couple of months to figure it out and decide what I wanted to do out of aluminum, what I wanted to do out of plastic, because there are a lot more pieces in there that clamp everything together. Because if you look at it, some of the rings move.
And some of them
Some of them don't. So I ended up sandwiching everything together with a couple of big blocks of ABS on both sides.
Oh, wow. I mean, and like, I don't think people quite realize, like, when this moves, it has to move and hit precisely the same spot every single time it's going to move for the camera shots not to stutter and bump around.
Yeah.
yeah, it has to repeat absolutely exactly the same for each pass for engine lights, the little navigation lights, cockpit lights. So every single time it has to repeat exactly the same so that all those elements can be lined up in post.
And you guys collaborated on this. How are you building the mechanisms before you're starting to dress them, or are you guys kind of doing it all at once?
I think on this one we built the mechanisms first, and then John started making it pretty.
Yeah, it was kind of
Yeah.
And there's some of it kind of, they're all different, but it's always this evolution of, I always think about the Titanic. At some point, somebody took one piece of metal and went out and laid it down and attached another one, and that's going to be the Titanic. This is the same thing. It's like somewhere we get started and then, it keeps growing, evolving.
Are the wings cast at all, or are they fully scratch built?
Scratch built.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And we can spin this, yes?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's so pretty. It looks, I love this mix of the, oh my gosh, it's the bomber turret again.
What do you know? That's a pretty popular feature these days.
That is so pretty. Oh
Dan
my
made that.
God. That is gorgeous.
It's a one of those Christmas ornament balls that you can fill with whatever you want, and you snap the two sides together.
I was totally sure that it was a kit, but you
Oh no, it's scratch built.
Oh my God. That's crazy. And the engines, of course, all light up. Well, you can remove that mount and put lights back there.
There's a functional one that goes there.
So it has mounts, 6 different.
This is a weird one. This is a really weird one.
Oh, right, because you can't mount it from the side.
Because when that wing rotates, it occupies 270 degrees.
Yep.
So the only way we can mount it is at 45-degree angles from the center.
Oh.
And I've never seen that before.
So I came up with a clamp that sits inside that's got holes basically through it, 2 pieces of aluminum that you clamp together and mount the rod. You can mount them in 4 different ways.
And that's to be able to hold it for all the different shots. Are you guys finished filming with this one?
Theoretically, we wrapped our last shot yesterday. Theoretically, that can always come back.
And it's in here now, it's being scanned, is that correct?
For texture reference and model reference.
So then they'll take your direct paint job and be able to apply it to the model?
Yeah, it's kind of this thing where we get renders to start with of,
Okay.
of an art department digital model. They give us those renders, which are 1-to-1, and then we build off those. And then when we get done, then they do a whole scanning routine, which amounts to, I think they took 4,000 images of this. And then they can do photogrammetry and use that for the texture information. And so they do the digital one initially to give us, then we build the model, and then they sort of take our model and they sort of adapt it to their digital one so that they kind of bridge the gap at the end.
Well, and I'm sure that they're taking the reflection reference off the actual model plates that you guys are shooting.
I would imagine. Yeah, they can just dial in the specularity wherever they want it. So.
Dude, these engine nacelle paints, I think this is one of the loveliest engine paint jobs I've ever seen. Tell me about this.
Well, yeah.
Did you paint this?
I did.
Oh!
But to credit where credit is due, I matched John's original paint job.
Yeah, we took it to Celebration.
Okay.
And put it on, and it was funny because they didn't do any kind of promotion of this, nothing, and set it all up, and it was out there. We had the Razor Crest. They had printed an N1 Starfighter from season 3 of Mandalorian for Jon Favreau, about that big, and then we had the light cruiser. Yeah. So they're all in a row down this table in this dark corridor, and I stood there all day for 3 or 4 days. I would stand there and watch the models, guarding them, and about 2 times a day somebody go, "Oh, it's Ahsoka's ship," and I was like, I want a gold star to go give that kid because people were walking by, they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was when we did the first shot of the light cruiser, we did the shot where it goes over camera.
Yeah.
And Filoni got that. He saw that, and he wrote me that day. He goes, "Oh my God, I want you to build this ship," and he sent me some artwork. And I looked at the artwork, and I'm like, "I've already built this ship." Wrote him back, and I said, "I built a concept model of this for I think episode 3 up at the ranch." And it was the same ship. It didn't have the rotating wing though at that point. But I was like, I knew this design when he sent it. So he took that design and modified it to have the rotating wing. So both the light cruiser and this have a long history that ties into the animated shows as well.
Are you doing vacuum forming as well to get these compound curves? All
and it's funny, these wings, these were vacuum formed on the Green Machine over at Kerner.
No way!
Yeah.
Oh, the Green Machine, that was the original, that's the factory vacuum form machine.
Yeah, LA Machinery Packaging Company, and they bought that in '75 for the first movie.
Wow.
So I went over there, they let me come over and use that machine to make that. It's 2x2.
2x2.
Yeah. So it ties in a little bit to the original Star Wars.
I just love the specular blue on the outsides here. That's absolutely gorgeous.
That paint is really fun.
Is there a part of the painting process that's your favorite?
Well, this was pretty high up there. This was really cool because I just bought these paints randomly. I went to Michael's and there was it was something alcohol pearlescent paint. I'm like, I'll give that a try. And I brought it home and I was like, holy crap, this stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
it really feels like burnt metal, but it also feels like a burnt of a different metal than I've ever experienced before.
Space metal.
metal.
Space metal.
We encounter space metal a lot on these jobs.
Dan, what was your favorite part of working on this? It sounds like it was a bear.
Honestly, my favorite part is always coming up with the mechanism that fits inside the artwork that they give us.
Yeah.
So this in particular was a lot of trials and tribulations, but when it finally started working correctly and we tested it at John Knoll's house, we're like, it works!
You brought it over and he put motion.
Yeah, we took it in his garage and hooked up his machine, and it actually turned. We're like, oh, thank God.
And I mean, you can't see it. You're not allowed to see any screws in the Star Wars universe.
Correct.
You can't have your, but you still have to be able, I'm sure, to be able to dismantle this thing.
Yeah,
to get to all
it
the
all has
motors.
to come apart.
Okay,
and,
so
and it can.
when you have to take it apart, can you walk me through what's the first panel you remove?
It'd be these two side panels.
Okay.
Those are the first ones that go, and then if you need to,
look at
those
that.
will come off. This is the riser mechanism.
Okay, and is that coupled to the wing mechanism?
It's not,
But this goes up and down.
but it does. Yeah, it moves up and down, and so when the wings are horizontal, this is supposed to be in the lower position, and it's just a lead screw.
It's a lead screw with a ramp on it?
with 2 blocks of Teflon.
Oh, I see that. Look
Right.
at that.
So these risers just ride up and down on the Teflon blocks.
That is awesome.
And the motor for that one is tucked in back here. Inside.
Okay, so the motor for the spinning is here, and the motor for the risers.
Right.
Both sides the risers?
They both work in unison.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then they have a spring return or something like that?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not just
The
gravity.
shaft, both of the shafts have small springs on them that pull them back down.
Well, the interesting thing too was when we started this, we didn't know those moved. And we were 2 or 3 months into it, and I called Dan. I said, look at the drawing for me real quick. Have you noticed in this view, those things are down here, and in this other view, they're up here? And he's like, oh. So I called the art department. I'm like, so we're noticing. I'm like, maybe I missed this in the meetings, and I hope not. So I called the art department. I'm like, so we're noticing this variation. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, thank God it's not me. So Filoni added that later on, but nobody told us. Oh, so that was an add-on, having to
was
fit
after
that
the
in
fact.
We had
there.
to, we had to go back in and reconfigure.
And so I see that there's a couple screw access ports here.
Yeah, when they're
Yep.
there.
But these, how do you get these panels off?
There's
Those side panels come off,
Oh, okay.
and then there's a screw, and then this thing kind of comes forward and comes off.
these slide forward and pop out.
This juxtaposition between the black and shiny, greasy, and the ship paint is just so lovely.
It's pretty cool.
Man.
It's interesting because when I brought this over here and they did the photo scanning, and that was like a year ago, guys came in and they're like, so it's all 3D printed? I'm like, no, it's mostly fabricated. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you take a piece of wood and you shape it and you do plastic. And they're looking at me like I'm talking about, I don't know, nuclear physics. I'm like, yeah, this is old school stuff, you know?
That is absolutely lovely. How long was this project between the two of you?
Well, we got the artwork
Back in '96.
March.
And
It was March 9th of 2 years ago.
Okay.
And we've been going back and forth. The first initial part of the build was I think straight through till December, maybe January. Wow. And then we did some cleanup, and it went to Celebration.
Right.
And then when it came back from Celebration, I had to finalize the motors, and so this was my punishment.
So the motors weren't finalized when it was in Celebration.
They weren't finalized. They did work, but they weren't finalized. The wiring wasn't finalized.
I see.
Yeah, and so that's when I came up with the umbilical back here for all the controls.
Now, can you change where that umbilical comes out?
Yes.
When you have a
route it.
different mount that's not here, you can change it to go to
change
that
it,
mount.
yeah. It's interesting because when we're shooting it, what I've been learning to do is take a piece of tape and stick it, because these are the doors for the side mounts right here.
Right.
These come out.
Okay.
As soon as we talk about it, I try and take a piece of tape, stick it on the door, because it's really easy to get confused with the design that's just symmetrical.
Yeah.
And we take it apart, and then you route the wires through whichever door it's got to go through. So
there's so much model making online. I think it's going to be surprising to people to realize that you're not just building a model, you're building a machine for filmmaking about a model. It's a totally different enterprise.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how much abuse these actually have to take because of the remounting and stuff like that. I mean, we're pretty hard on it.
Right, because you're going to take this off. It's got to sit somewhere while you're working on it.
You're trying to carry it over and set it on a table or something, and not break anything, and then dismantle it and get the rod in it and get it put back together.
Things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential for breakage and whatnot. And so you want it to be resilient enough to be able to be handled like that.
Right.
So yeah, they do get abused a fair amount. And it's funny because a lot of the work I do now is for museums restoring these things. And you get them and people are like, what happened to it? And like yesterday, I had to glue this thing to the wing because we were mounting it on a side with it. The wing was vertical, but the ship was on a side and the wing was sagging. Oh. So on this side, we had the rod under there. I put a little ramp under to hold this wing up. This wing I glued. I put some gaffer's tape here and on the inside of that.
Yeah.
And glued a piece in, but of course the glue got on stuff because I was doing it on the side. And when I took it off, it ripped some chunks out. And I'm like, these are these things where people get it later, and I'm like, what happened to it? I'm like, oh, these are the things that happen during shooting, and you do terrible things to models when you're shooting, and to get the end shot.
I love that you've actually got recognizable characters. You got Ahsoka here, and it looks like the T2.
That's some kind of robot pilot, and Hal Hickel asked for about a week before we were going to shoot. He said, "Can we have figures?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I ordered some. There were some kind of figures on Amazon. The crew came in their own little hypersleep pod.
Oh.
And I took them and picked out the most appropriate ones and then dismembered them with an X-Acto saw and reconfigured with some magic sculpt and
Turn it into
Ahsoka and her robot pilot.
I love that I can see some little red and black wires in the back there.
Oh, well, yeah, they're... But what's cool is that cockpit, when it lights up, the instrument panels, there's stuff in there. It looks pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's pretty neat.
I always loved the Slave One for how it reconfigured my thinking about what spaceships could look like. This feels like a similar kind of, there's a little bit of Tyridium Shuttle to me, right? Moving wings.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because I just worked on the Tyridium Shuttle not too long ago. Because it was out on tour and it had some damage and I fixed that. And it's interesting, the simplicity of that design.
Yeah.
And you look at the original Star Wars ships and they have some level of surface detail, especially like Star Destroyer's got a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
But the ships are pretty smooth and sleek. And you look at the complexity of this stuff now, and the aesthetic has changed somewhat. And some of that I think is because it's being designed a lot on the computer. But you look at how much stuff is going on everywhere. There are no blank open spaces. The Tydarian Shuttle has fields of blank.
Yeah.
It's very simple and it's more about just the shape. Whereas here, it's the shape and then it's got all of this surface detail clad onto it as well. So it's interesting to see how the aesthetic has changed.
I was just the other day painting an AT-AT and I was looking at AT-AT reference and I'm like, there's like barely any paint on some of these things.
So the front, the armor plates are wrinkle finish paint. You know that?
No.
Yes.
The armor plates of the AT-AT?
Yes.
Of the
Yes, the front and back body plates they have wrinkle finish. Nobody ever picks up on that. But that's wrinkle finish paint on those, either the small, the 22-inch, and the big one.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, I was trying to get that. I was doing digital paint on Rogue One, and I was like, I kept painting maps for that, and they weren't turning them on. I'm like, there's a finish that's supposed to be, and nobody would listen to me. But that is what's on those, wrinkle finish.
Do you have when I make a model, I feel like sometimes I make it just to stand there and add the last 300 greeblies and then the silvering on the paint. Those are my two favorite parts of the process. Do you guys have favorite parts in the execution of a ship like this?
My favorite part's when it's done.
Yeah, I was gonna. I heard that one coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, these take a lot of time, and I said this before. I think that we used to have a model shop, and we had departments. We had a lot of people.
Yeah.
And something like this could easily have 20, 30 people involved from front to back because you got mold makers, electricians, machinists, paint people.
Yeah.
And it's just us now, so it's it can be fairly stressful trying to hit the deadlines, and build all this stuff.
Even when the deadlines are months away.
Yeah, I mean, they give us a lot of time, but they take a lot of time to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's just problem solving. And there's so many times when I go to bed, and I've had the last 2 nights, I have woken up in the morning completely stressed out over a problem that does not actually exist that I have been solving all night long. 2 nights ago, I need to install LEDs on either side of the cockpit of this other ship, and there's going to be a little 1/16 of an inch acrylic rod on either side that's going to light up. None of this has anything to do with reality. It's just me stressing myself out in my sleep,
Dan, I'm wondering if you after a problem's been solved, do you think of other solutions for it? Do you keep on solving? Do you keep on iterating?
Coming from a machinist point of view where you're always improving your process, yes, I do. But on something like this, It's done.
And eventually there will be toys of this that will solve this problem in different ways. I bet
In a
you're
different
curious
way.
how they're going to do
I
it.
actually am very curious as to how toy companies are going to get this figured out.
I am sure there
So
are
it doesn't
people
break.
already cursing your name. Guys, it is such a beautiful ship. Yeah, you should be proud. It's lovely.
It certainly was, for the most part, a pleasure to work on.
For the most part.
And it's always really interesting to see it go from being on the page where we get it to being a three-dimensional object. That's a neat transformation. And the other thing, when it goes to stage and you shoot it, and it magically becomes Ahsoka's ship soaring
Right,
through
as
space.
soon as you see the nacelles lit up and flying into the
Yeah.
distance.
Yeah, as soon as you see it in a shot, it's like, wow, it's a whole different thing. So,
And
yeah.
you still feel the thrill after all these years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't been doing it for long, and I still feel it.
That is awesome. Yeah, I would too.